So hi everybody, thank you for joining us tonight to celebrate the launch of One Day at a Time Boys, which is an exhibition that's just opened yesterday on the exterior wall and digital window gallery at Open Eye Gallery, and that'll run until the 19th of September. So my name is Sarah Boyle and I'm the responsive programme coordinator at Open Eye Gallery, and I'm joined by artist and writer behind the project Sam Batley and director Paul Chambers. So it's been amazing to follow the progression of the different strands of this project over the past year, and I'm really excited to get a chat to you about it this evening. So just to give a bit of background for those that aren't familiar with the project, One Day at a Time Boys is a project that tells the story of life after addiction, informed by people in recovery. So the stories are told through documentary, film, photography, art and poetry. Through this lens, the project gives voice to what it means to be in recovery and how communities bring us together and how new interests and beliefs shape us and inform our values. So the project is split into 3 parts, beginning with the short film, 3 Bull Mastiffs in a Corner Kitchen, based on an autobiographical poem written by Sam Batley a few months into recovery from alcohol and drug addiction. And during this filming, a story began to unfold which ran parallel to the narrative of the short film. So the story of the men and women who acted in 3 Bull Mastiffs in a Corner Kitchen while in recovery themselves. So working closely with Damien John Kelly House, a recovery living centre for men in Wavertree, Liverpool, the team decided to create One Day at a Time, a documentary on life after addiction and what recovery means to those who are in it. And the last part of the project is a socially engaged project. So that's called One Day at a Time Boys, and it was started by Sam in Damien John Kelly House, and it allows residents to engage in photography, art and creative writing. So throughout filming the documentary, the lads documented the process and have amassed an impressive body of work, some of which features in the exhibition. So alongside their existing work of documenting individuals' recovery and growth. And the exhibition documents the production journey of 3 Bull Mastiffs in a Corner Kitchen and One Day at a Time through behind the scenes photography by Sam Batley, Paul Chambers, Jack Gibson, Jamie Maxfield, Maddie Owen, Wayne Goldie and Craig Taylor. So just to introduce our speakers tonight, Sam Batley is a programme assistant at Open Eye Gallery. He's a self-taught artist, drawing an inspiration from his past, where he has arrived in the present. Exploring a mixture of mediums and socially engaged practice, his work is categorised by self-inquisition and honesty, an extension of building on the belief that given a chance, we have the ability to express ourselves, embracing recovery values within a creative setting. And Paul Chambers is a Manchester-based filmmaker originally from Yorkshire. He comes from a documentary background and is intrigued by real life, make-believe and the spaces between, the underbelly of society, the obscure and the heartfelt, the poignant and the surreal. Chambers works as a commercial freelance filmmaker to support his personal film projects. He writes and directs documentaries and fiction shorts, with an eye on moving into features and generally learning more about the world, the people within it and himself. So after that introduction, hello and welcome. So yeah, I thought that we would start with talking about the film 3 Bull Mastiffs in a Corner Kitchen to begin with. And Sam, I wondered if you could kind of start us off and just tell us a bit about how the project started and how it developed.
Yes, Sam, thank you for the introduction. Thank you for hosting it and putting an exhibition on before we start out, really. It's been open, I've been a great support for me and the project. So let's get that out of the way before we crack on it. Yeah, 3 Bull Mastiffs come about 4 months. Can't really remember, 4 or 5 months into recovery, and I've written for some years, and I wrote in addiction, but my writing always seemed to be a kind of a projection out, everything outside of me, but a lot of blame, or it's this or it's that. This is so when I come into recovery and I were aware that I had an issue with drugs and alcohol, I started to learn what addiction actually was. And I started to see myself for myself. I started to see parts of my past for what they were. And the themes or emotions that played heavy in my life, which a lot come down to fear and low self-esteem, and with these realizations, it's kind of spilled into Freebull Mastiffs. I think I've been at library or something, and I was coming back to Damien John Kelly House, and I've not written, and I started writing on bus, and when I got in, I couldn't stop. I went to come and have some food, and I opened fridge and I shut fridge and I sat down and carried on writing, and it just kept coming out, and I finished with it. And that was that really. I just thought, buzzing, I can write again. You know what I mean? It weren't that at that point that I thought this is going to turn into this, or it's going to be what it is now. Sat, talking to you. It was just like I purged myself. It was like I'd written a piece that was about me and how I felt, and them situations and how them situations made me felt, and I learned to be a man really, and how them themes carried through my adulthood up until coming to Liverpool. Not long after that, lockdown come, and Paul was also my friend, and we'd worked on projects in past which were more like just like spoken video pieces, and he rang me. We were just chatting really, just chewing fat, you know what I mean? Like no like major or out like that. We were at Sale Water Park. He just asked me if I'd been writing, and at that point I'd been writing some more stuff, and shared Freebull Mastiffs with him along with some other writing, and it really Freebull stuck out to him, and he liked the visual elements of it. So, and then from there we started passing it back and forward on a Google Doc, which slowly turned into a screenplay, and we fleshed it out, and then we had a script, and then that kept getting passed back and forward. So I don't know if you want to have a say on that bit, Paul, about the old back and forth.
Yeah, it kind of happened like what you were saying there, quite organically. We just kind of, he sent me a load of recordings of spoken word poems and I just listened to them on my phone while I was walking through like this woodland area near where I live in Manchester. And all of them are good, like everything Sam writes is good, but not every bit of poetry can be turned into a film because obviously there's a difference in the medium. But yeah, the Freebull Mastiffs poem, it was originally, what is it, like 10 minutes long? Something like that, Sam?
Yeah.
Of just constant dialogue, like a stream of consciousness, non-linear, different characters, but it flicks back and forth. And I just thought that it would really work well as a film, quite an abstract experimental film, but like a narrative film. And we just started kind of over lockdown, so it was separately. We were just in our separate homes, kind of just back and forth. We'd do video calls, we'd do normal calls, and we just basically created this Word document with ideas in it. I'd talked to Sam about some of the characters in it, because obviously it's about Sam's life. I wasn't there. So we kind of talked a bit about the people, and we kind of developed the settings, and I visualized some of the settings, and Sam helped me kind of with that process. And then eventually we moved it from this kind of this shared Google Doc, because Sam isn't a screenwriter, so he doesn't use screenwriting software. So we kept it in a Google Doc for as long as possible until it was time that it was, pretty much in screenplay format, but in this doc. And then I just switched it over to screenwriting software. And then, we kind of developed it pretty quickly, to be honest. It was, so when did we first kind of start working on it, Sam? It was like March.
April. Like two weeks into lockdown, wasn't it? And then the turnaround was pretty quick. And then like all the way through April and then into May, and then we kind of thought, we've got something here. This is this is something, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's only like a few months where we kind of back and forth, and then once we finished with the screenplay and got it to not finish, you never finish a screenplay, but you know, we got it to a position where it was ready to kind of show people. I'd worked with Owen quite a lot on some other films, and I sent it to him and he loved it, and he was like, this is amazing, like yes, I want to be involved. And then the three of us just kind of like started further kind of producing the project. And just to be honest, it's one of the easier projects that I've had kind of produced and financed and like delivered. It all happened within the space of less than a year, I guess.
So just kind of seemed to develop like organically between both of you, and that original poem kind of carries the narrative throughout the film.
Definitely.
But I was interested in, Paul, like, was this a kind of new way of working for you? Like the kind of experience of working on this film, or had you done kind of previous similar things in the past?
So I think with me and Sam, it's kind of been a step up process, where Sam mentioned we'd worked on other things in the past which were more kind of performance-based videos, where it was more Sam kind of speaking the poem to the camera and then me kind of creating some visual aspects to go along with that. But then this was obviously a move into kind of more narrative filmmaking for me and Sam working together. I shot narrative before, but I'd never kind of shot in this way, where it's kind of spoken word mixed with kind of narrative filmmaking, non-linear. It's quite experimental, so it was a different process. And also just working with Sam in a collaborative way was different for me. I write scripts all the time, but I usually do it on my own. And so working with someone who's I would say, he's a poet, Sam, who's works in a very different way to me. I like to be a lot more structured with like planning out everything, whereas Sam, I think, is a lot more kind of just on the spot, throw it in, see if it works. So I think we worked together quite well in that sense, where it took my kind of pragmatic approach and Sam's just, as I said, throw it in, see what works approach. I don't know if it's got a name.
I love that, mate.
Yeah. And then it just worked really well. Obviously, like the key thing for us throughout the whole project, and it has been from the inception to the delivery of the short film, and then also in the documentary and all through the photography, is authenticity, and to make sure that everything we do comes from a place of honesty. And so having Sam as like an anchor point with the script really helped, because it was like, passing it through this test of Sam to make sure that it was something authentic. And then we kind of started with that as a base point, and then throughout the kind of development of the script, we decided that we wanted to move away from Sam's reality to kind of take the characters into their own place, so that Sam can kind of detach himself a little bit from the story, because obviously, it's not just something we've thought up. This is Sam's life, and these are people that actually, were in his life. So we wanted to move the characters away from the real people a little bit, just to give it that separation, and also to allow the actors to be able to put themselves into the roles, and it not just be a kind of, we didn't want the person playing young Sam to be trying to copy what Sam is like. We wanted him to embody the character himself. So I think it was helpful we made that decision about halfway through to kind of split away from reality and kind of take the film into its own, all the characters in the film into their own area.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to just share a few images from the film at this point, just to kind of give people an idea of what it looks like visually. I'll just kind of move through these. I think that's really interesting what you were saying about this kind of play between reality and kind of maybe a more fictional or like imaginative narrative.
I think like one of the big things behind that decision is because, the story that we're telling is playing out everywhere. It's not just like localized to my experience. It's it's a much broader narrative, and like the themes of, you know, toxic masculinity, addiction, you know, these are themes that aren't just unique to my story. Like, and these characters can interpret that as they wish.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that we were also conscious of, because we wanted it to not just be about Sam, we wanted it to be a universal thing, you know, even with the way that it was set in Yorkshire but filmed in Manchester. You know, it's filmed in Earlham in South Manchester, which is a community, like a really tight community that's a fairly deprived area, and you know, those areas are all over the country, and we didn't want to ever set it. You didn't want to, you know, show street signs, say this is Manchester or this is Yorkshire. We wanted it to be a kind of, we also didn't even want to date it, you know, it could happen at any time, and it could happen at any place to anyone. That was important to us.
Fact is that it's happening, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some of the themes is kind of what I wanted to touch on as well. So like, I think, yeah, that idea of it being like universal, and the kind of idea of like peer pressure and the kind of bravado of growing up as well, that like we're surrounded with as we grow up, was something that was communicated like really well, I think. And that idea of kind of things being like passed down through generations. But I wondered if you could talk a bit about some of those themes that you wanted to pull out through the film and kind of make more visible.
Yeah. So because like the narrative is taken from the piece, the original poem, and that original poem is like an exploration into my experiences of, you know, masculinity, the not so good parts of it, addiction, like not feeling like a part of, or that there's no what to do, that you're frustrated with your situation. So these themes are the ones that we pulled out and explored in film, because that's what it's about, you know what I mean? So the experience that I had were the like male behavior, or like the male role models that were around weren't great, and sometimes you have to get out before you can see it for what it is. Like, that it doesn't foster support, you know, there's like this unseen pecking order. And thing is with toxic masculinity is that when you're in it, it's very difficult to do out about it, because it'll be seized and used against you, you know what I mean? So it's about exploring the unwritten rules that are there but no one talks about, that were present in my experience. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I think that like really comes across in the film. And yeah, I kind of wanted to talk about, as we flick through these and kind of see the filming process a bit, just about how you shot the film. And I know you worked with cinematographer Owen Kent, who shoots on 16mm. So I kind of wanted to talk about the practicalities of shooting the film, and why you chose to shoot in film, and why that was kind of important to the project.
Yeah, we made a decision which was partly based on the aesthetic. Like, we really felt that the kind of the setting and the narrative and the aesthetic of the film would be enhanced by shooting on specifically 16mm, because it gives you that kind of coarse grain that 35mm doesn't give you, and obviously it doesn't. 8mm we actually did do some tests with, but it was just it was just not kind of high quality enough. You couldn't really make out what was going on. But we did shoot some textures on 8mm, and we used those in the title sequence. but we didn't actually use any of the 8mm stuff in the film. But yeah, the idea to shoot on 16mm was kind of to give all of the kind of settings this older aesthetic or ageless aesthetic, because the film flicks around in time, but is also kind of it's not really stated when the time is that the film is taking place. So we wanted it to be a kind of timeless, and we just felt that the aesthetic really kind of suited the narrative of 16mm. And also me and Sam both shoot stills photography, and we shoot on film for that, and it just really made sense to kind of do it on film if it was possible. And we talked about it a lot, but obviously shooting on 16mm film, the reason why it's not done much is because it's really expensive, and also quite impractical compared to digital. It adds a lot more kind of restraints, which when you're shooting a short film, there is already hundreds and thousands of restraints, because you're working with independent budgets, which are usually a lot lower than if you were working with a studio or whatever. And you're also working with limited amount of time. So yeah, it's basically, it creates a focus on the crew where everyone knows that you've got a certain amount of film stock in the canister, and so no one messes around when you say action. It's people really put everything into every take, and the crew are all very kind of single-minded in their approach, that we know that we've got to make this day happen, because if there are any mistakes, it's costing us money, and on an independent short film, there's not a lot of money usually. So yeah, it's a beautiful process to kind of come together and shoot on film, and it was something that I'm really glad that we kind of persevered with. It was made possible by a private donation from a charity, so we wouldn't have been able to shoot on film without that because of the expense of it. But yeah, it felt like now it is shot on film. I just couldn't imagine it being shot digital, if you know what I mean. Especially with all of the photography that goes along with the film, which is also on film. And we ended up shooting quite a lot of that, so it all works together as like what we wanted, one whole unit, one kind of coherent piece where the behind the scenes photography matches the film stock in terms of its profile, which is something that we looked into, matching the BTS with the film stock. And then it's really important to us to kind of keep it coherent in that way.
I think that really comes across in the work that was selected for One Day at a Time at Open Eye Gallery as well, and that all the photography shot in film as well, so it's kind of like a coherent body of work. And you'll also be able to see clips from the film and the documentary on our digital screen outside. But you kind of mentioned funding there, Paul, and I was thinking, could you talk a bit about the practicalities of making the project happen? You crowdfunded for to fund the project, and obviously it was successful.
Yeah. So originally, me and Sam and Owen kind of decided that we would crowdfund, and we would work with a budget of around £5,000, which is what our crowdfund target was. And so we weren't going to shoot on film because it's not possible for that kind of money. And then, we had a really successful crowdfund campaign where we were just blown away by the response. And we smashed the target within a few weeks. But the crowdfunding campaign, as most people who do crowdfunds tell you, is it's not all about the money. It's mainly about the exposure that you get from people looking at your project, and that there being an audience for it via this crowdfund, and it getting out there into the world. And it kind of did get out there into the world, and someone kind of picked it up from a charity, and they basically offered us the rest of the money that we needed to be able to shoot on film. I told him about our idea to shoot it on 16mm, and he basically said, how much do you need? And we kind of told him, and then that's how it happened really, with being able to shoot on film. And then the crowdfund was basically probably about a third of the total production budget.
Through that as well,
was crowdfunding.
Through that charity, we also secured five grand for Damien John Kelly House as well. They really liked what the projects were, and with that, we've been able to like develop this out like it's like building that's round back, and that's all being like gutted out, which will be like a creative space in the future. So that's being possible through that crowdfunding and fruit charity. So
yeah. So it was just it's a really amazing thing. So, you know, we didn't just want to just have the money to make this project, which doesn't actually, although it raises awareness, it doesn't like actually help anyone. So they were quite keen to be able to put some money into DJK House to actually, you know, like facilitate some of the issues that they had, you know, with the building. So yeah, just really indebted to the charity who, we keep saying the charity because they didn't actually want to be featured or like named in any of the kind of promo materials. They said, you know, that's not the reason they were doing it. They were doing it just, you know, because of the act of doing it, which is again amazing. So they also funded the documentary as well.
Yeah.
So basically, this whole project has been funded by the goodwill of this charity, and then also through crowdfund campaigns, because we did a crowdfund campaign for the documentary, which was also successful. So yeah, it just shows you like there's people out there that, you know, like do care and do want to give towards a good cause, and it's really nice to be a part of something like that, especially in a year that was quite kind of socially isolated. So it's nice to see.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's been just like amazing to see how the project has kind of bloomed over that time. And yeah, we're going to move on and talk a bit about the documentary. But the last thing I kind of wanted to highlight about the film was the casting process and how you worked with people from the recovery community in Liverpool who acted in the film alongside professional actors. And I was wondering if you could just tell us a wee bit about that.
Yeah. So we worked with professional actors and a mixture of people in recovery. We didn't just want to use people. We wanted to basically mix the two, going back to this kind of idea that everything has to come from a place of authenticity. We thought that the mixture of people in recovery who've got lived experience of the themes and the issues we're talking about, and then also the skill of a professional actor, and then when those two combine, we felt like it would create a good melting pot of kind of creativity and also authenticity. So we held some sessions at DJK House where we kind of did some script read-throughs with some of the residents, and then we also invited some other members of the wider recovery community in Liverpool to come and basically just hear the script, talk about the themes, and then kind of input, you know, give us some input on what they think about what we're talking about, what their kind of what their history with some of the themes are. And, you know, like we just had like an open discussion about it, and I made notes, and then we kind of said, you know, we're doing casting for it as well. So if anyone wants to be taken forward for casting, then, you know, we did headshots and we took details, and it was just a great session where we kind of, some of the stuff that was said in that session actually went into the script and helped develop the story. And then we did actually cast quite a few people from that session. And yeah, it was another just really organic process that just seemed to work really well.
Yeah. And then, moving on to the documentary, which features maybe some of the people who've also acted in the film, but is more kind of documentary, I suppose, rather than fictional, and focused on recovery. So I was wondering kind of if you could talk about how the documentary came about, and why it was important to kind of add this chapter to the project as well.
Yes. So the documentary come about like what would you say, probably about a month before we were like running up to filming. Basically, like when we started doing casting workshops, and we were like, and we started to see what it was that we were doing, I suppose. And then we'd kind of discussed it lightly, and then like in the lead up to the documentary, we got like a B cam, like a little handy cam, which I had in house. We just started documenting lead up to the film. And again, just as we've described for Free Bull Mastiffs, it was an organic process. And ultimately, the documentary is the opposite to the film. And it allows us, through deciding to do documentary, it allows us to tell the full picture, because I think it's quite symbolic that we've got, you know, one day at a time is going to be about hope, about what men can be, you know, like what recovery is. It's like it's adding to the narrative, which is the antithesis of the stigma that's present with addiction, and showing what can be possible once, you know, once we like hand the sent over to it. So it's basically it's to carry on the authenticity. It's all right to tell a story about like addiction and the themes that are present in addiction, but I think it's a much bolder thing to tell what comes after it. And that's why we decided to do it, really, to tell a full picture of the experience, and
Yeah.
it's possible.
It kind of happened as we were as Sam said, as we were leading up to the filming of the documentary, we realised that this kind of the people who are acting in the film, who are in recovery, acting in a film about addiction, that was almost a real story, you know, like not more important, but as important as the short film. And it was kind of like a scramble. It was like a mad moment where we were like, why aren't we capturing this? Like, we need to capture this story. So we just kind of, Sam already had the handycam and he was already capturing little bits. And I kind of got one of my mates who is a documentary filmmaker to just come down to the short film. It was quite last minute, and just capture what was happening, you know, doing BTS videography there. And we managed to capture some of the filming and then did some interviews there. And that's what kind of started the documentary. And then we used some of that footage in the teaser campaign for the crowdfunder for the documentary, and then kind of went to this charity and said, we're looking at doing this. We want to tell the story of recovery. It's going to be a full circle project where we, you know, show addiction and then we show recovery. And they were all on board for it. And then we got the funding to make the documentary, and then this is where we are now.
Yeah.
And was the approach to making the documentary, like, I assume, quite different then to how you approached the short film?
Yeah, massively different, because it's capturing real life. You can't plan for real life, you know, like, I mean, we tried our best, but stuff just happens, you know, people move on, people don't necessarily kind of do what you want them to do, because everyone lives their own life. The short film was planned meticulously because of the 16mm shooting format. So you have to time out how much stock you've got per scene, per take, you know, and it's every single minute of the day is planned. Whereas with a documentary, it's kind of, you know, like, we're not trying to create anything new, we're just capturing what's there. So we're just literally turning up. We obviously planned in some activities, and we planned in some to make sure that the people were, you know, going to be at the house on the day that we were filming, but the rest of it was just, you know, just capturing, like, it's a really nice vibe in the house. Like, we didn't have to create anything that wasn't already there, you know, it's already a beautiful atmosphere. Everyone's kind of working together and looking out for each other, and all we had to do was basically stay out of the way and film it. So yeah, it was quite a different process, but we still shot on 16mm for some of the documentary. We wanted to kind of keep that narrative, the visual narrative of film running throughout it. So we're obviously still documenting on film, and then we're film photography, and then we're also shooting some scenes in 16mm on the documentary to kind of make sure that the project all ties in.
Mm-hmm. And Sam, maybe you could just talk us through some of the kind of narrative decisions around the documentary. I know it's still in the making as well, and you're kind of shooting the final scene this weekend, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, which will feature kind of the people who are in Three Bull Mastiffs watching the film. So I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah. So the narratives that like run through documentary are, like, at first we thought, like, what's going to be like the anchor point for it, like how like its broad is recovery, you know. But we kind of looked on, we decided to look into how like sports, like culture and art can be integral to recovery, as well as therapy, and as well as, you know, meetings, art, how it all forms together. Like when you come into recovery, there's almost like a kind of like a death of self, I suppose. That there's a realization that the person that I've been, or the behaviors that I've had, or what I like or what I dislike, aren't necessarily fact. So the documentary looks into that as we start forming new identities, how creativity and sports can play a vital role in forming what it is that you like, by embracing like willingness and, you know, recovery values, like willingness, open-mindedness. So as Paul said there, like the stuff is already here, it already exists. We just needed to tell it. And yeah, so like that's it. Like the narratives that run through the particular kind of like recovery that's done at Damien John Kelly House is one that's been tailored by PJ Smith and Jackie Smith and Jackie Fisher, should I say, who have got a wealth of experience in the Liverpool recovery community, and they're onto that in order to become, in order to leave addiction, you have to create a life that's better in recovery, and a better life can be had in them things that we discuss and touch on in the documentary.
Mm-hmm. And there's a sense of the kind of the project coming full circle as well through the documentary, isn't there? From the initial kind of film and then ending with the screening. But yeah, I think it was kind of like a natural time to move on to the socially engaged work that you do with residents of Damien John Kelly House, Sam.
Yeah.
Do kind of workshops in photography, art and creative writing, and that's called One Day at a Time Boys. And photography from that is also featured in the exhibition. So I was wondering if you could just tell us a wee bit about how that started, and you've talked a bit about what it involves, but maybe in a wee bit more detail.
Yeah, so I suppose One Day at a Time Boy started when I started volunteering at Open Eye. To be fair, I'd never heard of what social engaged practice was. I mean, I was doing it a little bit without knowing what it was, I suppose, before that. So like volunteering at Open Eye Gallery and actually hearing it's a thing and like seeing examples of how it's done really opened my eyes, and like conversations that I had with staff at Open Eye Gallery kind of give me some belief in myself as an artist and what could be done. Because like I've been on my own journey in this itself, you know. And part of my like old views were that I couldn't, like that I didn't feel welcome in gallery spaces. I didn't feel like I was an artist or a photographer, or these were like my core beliefs, which are tying into like low self-esteem, fear, and, you know, low self-worth, which is what I mentioned earlier. So it's been a big thing for me really to be able to give something that helps me. Like when I came to Liverpool, I stopped I'd not med out for past year anyway. I'd not, because I weren't in a fit state to. And then in the first 5 months, as I said before, I wrote 3 Bull Mastiffs. I weren't doing it because it was just like sensory overload, I suppose. Like that. I'd gone from one place and I'm now in Liverpool, and I'm doing this thing called recovery, and I'm finding out about myself and making new mates, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, you know. So once all that kind of settled down and started to get into like a little bit of a rhythm, yeah, lockdown it. And I had a little like scare at the beginning of lockdown when I thought, oh, man, this is rough, this, I can't stay here, I'm going to go back home. And I didn't stay. And in that decision, I could see that I was taking from the situation. I was seeing it, the situation as, this is negative, he's doing my head in, I'm fed up of this.
I'm going to go for PCR next, but I'm going to go for...
I'm going to go out. I'm going to leave. And I didn't. I stayed, and we stayed, and I decided, what can I bring to the situation? So what I brought to the situation were art and creativity and photography. About a week before lockdown, I picked up two extra cameras in a charity shop from Darnt Road. And there were only about 6 lads in house at that point, so I started doing little groups, little painting groups, drawing exercises, and yeah, it just, again, organic and authentically developed from there. Some lads really took hold of it and they really like embraced it with open arms, and that I kind of lived vicariously off that. I loved seeing them buzz off it, because I could see that they had the same buzz as what I had, or not necessarily what I had, but I could see that there was something happening, and I just kept on exploring that. And I've got some funding, got some more cameras, and yeah, it, again, just kept going, kept developing, and then we are where we are now, again, where lads have like documented full BTS at documentary, you know. One of the lads who's part at One Day at a Time Boys, Craig, he'd had like an experience with film in past, studied it at university. And we had a conversation when he first arrived at house, and I basically said to him, what, like, you know, in recovery, it's possible to get back stuff that you've lost in addiction. And we took him on board and given him role as production assistant for documentary, and he's been brilliant, man. Absolutely brilliant. You know, Craig's took this photo that's there now. And all lads, you know, they all chipped on it. And it's basically just giving a space. I can't say that, you know, here's a camera, like, if you don't take photos with it, I'm going to have monk on with it. Like, all I can do is create a space where creativity can exist in. And like, that's what at this point, that's what I've tried to do. And it's become part of culture of Damien John Kelly House. You know, this week, for example, I've got exhibition at Oppenheimer. With lads have got their own exhibition on Friday with Dead Pigeon Gallery, and we're going to premiere on Sunday. You know, there's a new lad moving into it. He's coming into that. He's coming into that into community where this stuff exists. It's real. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you've created a kind of like a real core kind of project that has developed and just kept going over this time. And you mentioned the Dead Pigeon Gallery, which is launching, an exhibition launching this Friday, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And you've like shown the One Day at a Time boys work at Love Wavertree in the past as well, so it's really really like taken off. And also you have an Instagram account that people can share work on, so people can kind of follow along with that.
Yeah, so I've got an Instagram account. Like, lads put the work up, and lads write their own piece for it. So they write where they are in the self, or what's in the photos. So, like I say,
Oh, I think you're frozen, Sam.
Yeah. I think it's frozen.
it's not. I don't.
You froze for a bit there, Sam, but you're back now.
Yeah, so like the on that page, it's like it's lads work, lads' narrative. They have had took photos like, so I aren't. I don't have a say in it, mate. It's all from them. All I do is just put some groups on and some discussions. It's lovely. I'm honest to God. It's proper. Yeah, it's surreal. It's mad how in such a short time, like literally the body of work that there's hundreds and hundreds. I get more excited seeing their photos come back. Nah, it's I'm chuffed with it. It's very nice.
And yeah, we just show like a couple of photos from that kind of whole body of work. But a lot of it is, yeah, the photography done like through the workshops, and just kind of in your own time. But then you also documented, One Day at a Time Boys documented the whole documentary process as well, and all the behind the scenes footage.
Yeah.
So they're all kind of like interlinked and interconnected,
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. So yeah, I kind of just wanted to kind of wrap up here, and ask you, yeah, what your next plans are for these projects. Yeah.
Sam, do you want to cover the gallery exhibitions, and I'll talk about the film festivals?
Go ahead. Yeah, so this Friday, tomorrow, Earth at the Bakery in Kenny, Dead Pigeon Gallery with One Day at a Time Boys. I think there's 10 lads exhibiting work. We'll have some chats, some talks about lads can give their personal experience, and then we've got a Parisian cellist as well. I can't playing. I forgot her name. So yeah, that's on for a week. Is that if people want to come down and see what we're about, the opening night is on Friday 6 till 10, as I've just said, which will also be featuring as a part of documentary, and kind of caps what's been built up in these months of filming where we've been on groups. Yeah, that's One Day at a Time, boys. We've got a zine coming out soon, which is currently in production, where we can give a bit more space for lads to tell the story, and feature other, like drawing. Some lads draw, some lads paint, some lads want to do some more long-based written stuff about their experience. Just like, yeah, just sharing some positivity, yeah. So that's what One Day at a Time boys are that way, on way.
Cool. And the short film that we've made is finished, and that's currently at film festivals at the moment. We've got the kind of private premiere, which will be this Sunday, which we're also filming up for the documentary. And then some of the people in the house are going to, do some shares and do some kind of spoken word performances at that as well. And that's going to wrap up the filming for the documentary. That'll be the last day of shooting. And then obviously the documentary will have to be edited, and then that will be released in the future sometime. But the short film is kind of currently at film festivals. It's going to be at Bolton Film Festival, which is from the 29th of September until the 3rd of October. And it's showing there if anyone's local to Bolton. And then we're at Nottingham, and we've got into a few others as well. But yeah, so have a look out for it. It'll be at different film festivals throughout this year and next year. And then hopefully the documentary, once that's finished, we'll get some distribution sorted for that as well.
Amazing. Lots planned. Well, thank you very much for your time, just telling us a bit more about each project. And yeah, just to let people know again that they can come down to Open Eye Gallery, and the exhibition is on our exterior wall in the atrium space, and also includes kind of bits from the film and documentary on our digital screen, and that runs until the 19th of September. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us. Sam will be on Discord now for about 20 minutes if you have any questions or would just like to kind of comment or chat more about any of the work that we've kind of spoken about tonight. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.